Hi, welcome to another episode of the Art and Science of Cooking. Today I'm going to make some kind of generally American Chinese style tofu with some fried rice. And you can use chicken or tofu for this. I'm going to use tofu today to prove to you that I can cook vegetarian. And it's good with tofu, it's good with chicken. Something you should know about cooking with tofu, if you haven't cooked with tofu before, is that you usually have to press it. So what you see here is I have a heavy cast iron pan, and underneath the pan I have, you can see, I have this wrapped in towels, and this is cut up tofu. So when you take out tofu, it's in liquid, and if you press it, you get, I cut it up before I press it, but you get slightly drier tofu. That's going to help it to crisp up, and it's going to help with the texture. It's not necessary. You just won't get as crispy of tofu without it. Another thing about tofu, don't use it as a meat substitute. So tofu is a distinct, completely separate food from meat. In the US, I think we usually substitute tofu in for other things when we want to make them vegetarian. They're just totally different. So a lot of people are a little worried about tofu or scared of it because they think it's a vegetarian alternative, like a meat substitute, and that's just not what it is. So if you start substituting tofu and instead of meat into a bunch of things, you might get some weird flavors. Tofu on its own has its own flavor, it's got its own characteristics, it's got its own texture, and it's best to cook with it as its own ingredient. So I would suggest that if you are a vegetarian and you don't like tofu, try cooking something that is, Chinese or Korean or from cultures that actually use tofu in their everyday cooking. And they don't eat tofu because they have to, they eat it because they like it. And again, I want to make the caveat here that today I'm going to be showing a very general, like American Chinese style recipe for tofu. This is really kind of inspired by the Sesame chicken style, like things you might get in the US. And the reason I'm doing that is just because the ingredients are a little bit easier to get. I've simplified the sauce down. The dishes can get very complex with tofu. I really like Korean soft tofu soup, and mapo tofu from China, but these things require a lot of different ingredients. So I wanted to kind of do something with American ingredients for the most part, but the taste will definitely improve if you go to the store and you get Korean ingredients for your Korean dish or Chinese ingredients for a Chinese dish and actually find a real recipe. So with that, I've dried out my tofu. If you haven't done that, try to do it just right now while you can. When you're buying tofu, I bought extra firm. It's up to you what texture you want. It's all good. It's good for different things. So today I'm going to be kind of frying it, so I want it to be a little firmer. But it really doesn't matter that much. It's all going to be good. And so once my tofu is dried out a little bit, and it's still soft to the touch, just the towel, you can feel the towel is wet. I'm going to put it into a bowl. So I'm going to drop it into a bowl here. Whoop. And so I just you can use paper towels, use a regular towel, just so I can wash in the laundry. This is, it's just water. And so once it's in the bowl, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some cornstarch. And so if you're using chicken, do the same thing I'm doing. The cornstarch will help whatever you're cooking crisp up. So when you fry things, you get them really crispy by covering them in a little cornstarch. So the amount you add just enough until it's lightly coated. Don't add too much, you just need a light thin coating on the outside. You don't want them to be like covered, so you can actually see a thick layer of cornstarch on there. And yeah, for chicken, you can do the same thing and it'll fry up a little more crispy. And so I'm just going to add that in. So this is 1 package of tofu in here. I think it's a pound. I'm going to add in just a little cornstarch, and then I'm going to mix it to kind of coat it. And then this is the point where we also want to season the tofu. And so the drier the tofu is on the outside, the crispier it'll become. And this is kind of what the cornstarch is helping to do a little bit. And so so some people like to marinate their tofu, and especially chicken, you can marinate chicken. Go for it, do an oil-based marinade. I'm going to be making the sauce separately afterwards and just coating the chicken or the tofu in it later. So that's what I've chosen to do. Remember, tofu really absorbs the flavors of what's around it, so if you do put it in a marinade, it'll really soak that up and it'll taste like that all the way through. But today I kind of want to taste the tofu itself. Tofu does have a taste. It's not flavorless. I actually kind of like the taste, as long as you're not, again, if you make like a hamburger out of tofu, you're not going to like it. So you got to cook with it where it's meant, you got to put the tofu where it's meant to go. So I've got cornstarch here. I'm going to season it, so salt and pepper. And salt actually, I think I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the videos, but salt brings out flavor. So you don't always salt things to make them salty, you salt them to bring out whatever flavors are there. Pepper does not go in every dish. In the US we put pepper in everything. I like the flavor of pepper, but think of pepper like oregano, right? You wouldn't put oregano in every single thing. And Italians don't put oregano in everything. It's just another spice. Pepper is just another spice. It doesn't have to go in everything. So I'm just putting it in here because I like it. But don't feel like you always have to put pepper wherever there's salt, especially if you don't like pepper. Alright, so now this is coated. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my skillet, you saw before, my big skillet. I'm going to heat it up on the flame until it's kind of medium high, until this oil is shimmering, and we're going to brown our tofu or our chicken. And again, we're just going to fry it until it gets crispy on the bottom. So I'll start that. And so something you can do here is, I've asked you to get sesame oil if you don't have it already. Sesame oil, if you smell it, it's one of those ingredients that when people don't know that this is used in this kind of food, it's the kind of missing ingredient. Like when you eat food that you make at home and it doesn't taste the same, and you're using vegetable oil, sesame oil is one of those things that will make the food taste kind of more like restaurant style or more like authentic, depending on the cuisine you're talking about. So if you want to fry, you can fry in sesame oil. Don't fry in all sesame oil because it's really strong. Add sesame oil and some other oil. So you can do vegetable, I'm going to do olive oil. So I'm just going to combine these together. So this is for flavor and this is kind of for substance. Just don't fry in all sesame oil. So I'm just letting that heat up. And something that really helps, so I'm going to start frying. If you haven't seen one of these, it's a little wire like splatter guard for your frying pan. So you put it on top and it doesn't splatter as much, because we're going to be frying these. You can deep fry, so for like orange chicken style or General Tso's chicken style food, that chicken is actually deep fried. So you can fry it, in a thick pot with a layer of oil. Definitely have an adult help you if you're not an adult yourself. Deep frying is the biggest thing in the kitchen that can hurt you, and you can really get hurt with it. Today I'm just frying, same as I did the meatballs, in a thin layer of oil, because I can toss the tofu. And so it looks like the oil is shimmering now, and I can smell the oil. So I'm going to add these in, and I'm just going to toss them in the pan and fry them until they're golden brown. Starch acts similarly to gluten by forming a network in whatever medium it's enclosed in. When you dissolve cornstarch in water, the water will turn cloudy at first and opaque. But when you heat up the water, or any water containing a dish you're making, such as the sauce we're making, if you heat it up past 95 degrees Celsius, the cornstarch will form a network kind of like gluten does. This network will thicken your sauce. Once you're starting to cook your sauce, make sure that you let it sit once the cornstarch starts to thicken it. If you agitate the sauce too much, you'll break the structure and the sauce won't be as thick and glossy. So give it a stir at first and then just let it cook. When you fry something that's coated with cornstarch, again, cornstarch will absorb the water from whatever you're frying in, but it will also emit that water as you heat up the thing you're frying in oil. When the water leaves the cornstarch network, what's left is the network without any water inside. So it forms a very brittle and crispy outside crust on whatever you're making, whether it's tofu or fried chicken. So the tofu, tofu is a prepared product. It's not exactly raw or cooked when it comes to you. It's kind of like, it's similar to how cheese is made. It's kind of fermented and curdled. So When you cook it, you're really just giving it more flavor. You don't have to worry about how done the tofu is. It won't really change flavor that much. It'll just change a little bit of the texture. What we're doing now when we brown it is giving it a little bit of flavor on the outside and a little bit of texture on the outside. But don't worry that you're going to get poison from your tofu, as long as the tofu is, not expired. So I'm gonna just start the fried rice right now. So I already have rice that I made before. Day-old rice, 2-day-old rice, 3-day-old rice. It's the perfect rice for stir-fried rice because it's gonna be firmer. I just made the rice because I didn't have leftovers, so that'll work fine, but it'll be just a little mushier. Leftover rice is actually perfect for this, and fried rice is the dish of leftovers. I've got veggies here. I've got a carrot, broccoli, a bell pepper. I've got an onion. This is just what I had. You can make fried rice with anything. Frozen peas, mushrooms, anything you want, you can toss in there. Scallions, water chestnuts, whatever you want. And this is how you use up kind of your leftover produce. Because I know a lot of people who, when they go shopping, they buy, they want to make, a pasta sauce. So they buy everything they need for the pasta sauce. And they get home and then they have like leftover, maybe leftover basil from it, and they didn't use all of their onion, and they have leftover mushrooms, and then they don't know what to do with it. They look for another recipe. Something that you can always use for it is fried rice. So I'm going to stir my tofu. And just watch out to make sure your tofu, that there's still oil in the pan. You don't want to, run out of oil and start burning your tofu. And so I'm just going to start getting the fried rice now ready. So I don't even have all the ingredients I said in the instructions. So I'm just going to be using garlic. Garlic is always great for this. Garlic and onion is kind of your flavor base. And then the veggies I'll add are carrot, broccoli, and bell pepper. You can do whatever you want. You can do more, you can do less, whatever you want. But the key is that we're going to cook the vegetables in a certain order. So broccoli takes the longest to cook. It's going to go in first. Garlic does not take a long time to cook, but it does infuse the oil with flavor. A lot of people would add the garlic first. I'm actually going to add it a little later because it's easy to burn the garlic if you add it first. I'm going to add it with the other two veggies. And so carrots and bell peppers, they take less time to cook, and onions take who knows how long to cook. You can cook them very quickly, you can flash fry them, or you can cook them for like 40 minutes and they'll caramelize. Onions are magic, so however you like your onions, put them in then. So if you like your onions really cooked, like caramelized, add them really early. If you like them still pretty crisp, add them at the last second. So I'm just going to start chopping now. And so I'm still going to be keeping an eye on the tofu. I've got it, I don't have it on super high heat. It's on, medium heat. It just needs to crisp up. You're not going to overcook your tofu, so don't worry about, don't worry about your tofu overcooking, but worry about it burning. So something that's always useful is to have a towel. Wipe off your cutting board. Fancy new cutting board here. Not that fancy, $20 at IKEA. So I'm just going to get a few cloves of garlic. Again, it's the taste. It's difficult to put in too much garlic. The times when people put in too much garlic is when they confuse clove for bulb. So if I say 2 cloves of garlic, 2 cloves of garlic. If I say 2 bulbs of garlic, which no one's ever going to say, that's 2 of these. So don't mix those up. So I'm going to do, 3 cloves. Because I'm going to use one of them for the sauce. And just like I said before, I'm going to cut the edges off, the ends off, because you don't want to eat those, and it's going to give the garlic somewhere to go. gonna pull that to the side. Then once you've done that, go ahead and just smash the garlic a little bit, and it's gonna pop right out of the casing it's in. And so you don't have to go super hard, you don't have to flatten it. You're just hitting it a little bit so it detaches from its casing. There, and it just pops right out. Done. People are always afraid of fresh garlic, but it's not too bad. Woo. Actually, a little pro move I'll do here is I'll put the trash can right up to the edge, and then I'll put my cutting board up to the edge, and I can push anything I don't need to the side. And so now we're just going to mince this up. And you know, the mark of a professional cook is that their working area is always going to be clean. So I've still got my veggies on the cutting board. That's bad. That shows that I'm an amateur. I'm going to move them off my cutting board. Now I have as much space as I need to mince up this garlic, and it's going to make your life less stressful. It's going to make what you do a lot easier. Because I think you start cooking and you start cutting all the veggies on the same board, and you start running out of space and you start getting stressed out, and then cooking goes from something that you enjoy to something that you dread. And you don't want to do that, because cooking is like washing your hands. You're going to do it for the rest of your life, so hopefully. So you want to at least enjoy it a little bit. I guess like you enjoy washing your hands. So I'm just giving it a rough mince. And then right off the bat, I'm going to take about a third of it. I'm just going to put it into the bowl. I'm going to make the sauce in. And the rest, I'm going to do what they tell you not to do. I'm just going to drag it to the side of the cutting board, because I don't want to waste a plate on it. And there's my garlic. So I'm going to check on my tofu. Alright, and now I'm going to peel my carrot. Well, actually, what I can start with, I'm going to cut my broccoli because it's going to go in first. And so my tofu is finishing up there. So I'm actually going to just finish out my sauce and then add it to the tofu. And then coat the tofu in the sauce and leave that to cool. So the sauce is pretty simple. So you're just going to add vinegar. So I told you white vinegar. I happen to have black vinegar. This is kind of a little bit of a different taste, but white vinegar works just fine. Vinegar, soy sauce, and sugar. And so I've given you the recipe ahead of time. I'm just going to kind of eyeball things here. But I'm going to do 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. So this is super salty. You don't want to salt it anymore after this. And then some vinegar. Some sugar. If you have honey, this is a perfect opportunity to use it. And my garlic's already in there. So I'm going to use a little less sugar because I don't like my sauce to be as sweet. A little bit of sesame oil. Some garlic should also be in there. And some ginger. And then if you have chicken stock, use that. I'm going to thin it out with a little bit of water. That's just because I want to be able to coat all the tofu in the sauce. And if I just used more of each ingredient, it would be too strong. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water. And then I'm just going to whisk it. So you're just going to whisk the sauce. And how do you know if your sauce is going to taste good? Well, you got to try it. So you can try your sauce right now. It's not going to hurt you. Unless you're using the bowl from raw chicken, in which case I hope you wash the bowl before you use it for sauce. But just go ahead and try it. You're going to cook it down, so it should, it'll get less intense. You just try it. And if you like the flavor, what you're going to do is you're going to add just a little bit of cornstarch in there. So I'll bring this around here so you can see it. You're going to add some cornstarch, and that's going to thicken the sauce for you. So it's not going to thicken it until you heat it up. And that's the key. So I'm going to add a little bit. And then if that's not enough, you can always add more cornstarch. You can't take it away. So depending on how thick you want your sauce to be, add that much cornstarch. And you'll see that the sauce changes. It gets opaque because of the cornstarch. And this is really where you can play with flavors. I'm giving you just the basics of a sauce here, but you can use, you can even put peanut butter in there if you want more peanut flavor. I'm just going to do a little more. And so when you get like these thick sauces, from takeout places where it's coated in this like glaze of sauce, like sweet and sour chicken or sesame chicken, that's just cornstarch. They're using cornstarch, probably more than you think, to get that kind of texture. Unless they're using another type of compound. And so the idea of adding the cornstarch now is that you can whisk it in. So now that it's whisked, I'm just going to add it to the tofu and coat the tofu and cook with the sauce until the sauce reduces, until some of the water evaporates and you get a thicker sauce. And take it off whenever you think your sauce is just a little bit too thin, because it's going to thicken up when it cools. So I'm going to add that now. I'm going to use the bowl for the tofu when I take it out. Alright, so now I'm just going to chop the broccoli. I'm just going to take the stem off. You can actually eat it if it's too tough. So this part here, if it's too tough, you just take a paring knife and just take off. I don't know if you can see right there. There's an inner core and then there's an outer layer around the inner core of thicker skin, but the inside is actually pretty tender. Just this outside that's pretty thick. So you can take a paring knife or even a vegetable peeler and just peel the outside of it and chop it up, and that's actually where a lot of the flavor is. Most of the flavor is there, and it's in the stem of the broccoli, it's not in the crown. Or you can just use it for stock. So I'm going to just roughly break this apart into whatever size pieces I want. That's going to go in first. And then I'm going to peel my carrot. You should be smelling that sauce now. It smells good. Make sure you toss your chicken or your tofu every now and then, just to make sure that it's coated in the sauce and nothing's burning or sticking to the bottom of the pan. And also to be checking on your sauce, because you don't want to overcook it. So if you overcook the sauce, if it reduces down too much but it's not scorched, then you can always just add a little more water or chicken stock, whatever you used to dilute it earlier. So if you want all your veggies to cook about the same, at the same time for the same doneness, you want to just make sure that they're all about the same size, because larger things cook more slowly. So I'm just going to chop the larger pieces in half, and then I've got my carrots all about the same size. And finally, your bell pepper. Cool little trick. I don't know if I've shown this before. To open up your bell pepper, just going to cut underneath the bell pepper and roll it along your knife. And as long as your knife is pretty sharp, you should just get the bottom to pop out like this. And I'm just going to trim off some of the ribs. then I'm just going to give it a dice. So I'm going to check on my tofu. So I'm going to use the same pan, and I'm just going to add in, so I'm not making any special sauce for this because the tofu already has sauce with it. So I'm just going to use like olive oil, salt, pepper, and that's it for my fried rice. But you can add, soy sauce, or you can make the same dressing in it for chicken. I've got the pan on heat now. I'm gonna add some oil, and then I'm gonna toss in the broccoli. This is called broccoli, and I'm just gonna cook that. And remember, you're going to add in your next veggies when the previous ones are just cooked enough that the rest of the veggies are going to cook in the same amount of time. So I'm not cooking the broccoli all the way. I'm just cooking it a little bit at first, giving it a little bit of a head start before I add the other veggies. So I'm just going to clean up my station a little bit. I'm just going to dice up some onions. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add in my veggies one by one. I'm going to cook them, and then I'm going to add my rice at the very end and cook that. And something else I like to do is I like to add a little bit of egg in there. So the way you would add egg is that after you put your veggies in, and even when you put your rice in, you're going to turn your heat down a little bit, push your rice up to the side, and then crack in a few eggs and just whisk them right in the pan wherever they are. And just, fry them like an omelet, or like scrambled eggs. Actually, I keep mine stirring. I stir mine, and just make them like scrambled eggs right in the pan, and then just fold them into the rest of your dish. And so then you'll have fried rice. And so with those two, you'll have a pretty good meal. And it might have sounded like a lot of work, but actually you can see like I made two completely separate dishes, and they're both pretty quick. It's just about however long it takes to get the stuff out of the cupboard, really, and wash your dishes. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope this one was pretty quick for you, even though you might have expected it to be longer. Yeah, happy cooking.